One of the most satisfying aspects of becoming invested in a movie franchise is getting to see beloved characters grow and change from film to film. Because who among us stays the same person their entire life? Not me. Now, while there are certainly those movie series which feature largely evergreen, never-changing protagonists, looking at you, Mission Impossible, it can be tremendously rewarding to see heroes and villains transform over the years. To be clear, this list won't be examining simple recasts where parts changed hands between actors, because that's just too easy, but characters who underwent massive physical and possibly emotional changes, be it for practical filmmaking reasons or, more often, to reflect the passage of time since the previous movie. These 8 transformations are all pivotal and unforgettable within both the context of the character and the franchise itself, reinventing the hero or villain in such a provocative way that it's tough to even think about how things used to be. So I am Gareth, this is What Culture, and here are the 8 most drastic character transformations between movies. Number 8, Sarah Connor, The Terminator and Terminator 2 Judgment Day. Let's kick things off with unquestionably one of the most impressive and effective physical character transformations in cinema history. Might as well. In James Cameron's The Terminator, future mother of the Resistance, Sarah Connor was a totally ordinary-looking young woman, a damsel in distress with bouffant hair who just scarcely escaped the T-800's clutches with her life intact. Terminator 2 Judgment Day, however, takes place over a decade later, and an institutionalized Sarah is now a lean, physically imposing specimen of a soldier, with the chirpy waitress of her past now nothing more than a distant memory. Hamilton trained 18 hours per week for 13 weeks with a former commando to shed 12 pounds of fat and build muscle, less than 2 years after giving birth to her son, no less. Impressive stuff. But the results speak for themselves. Sarah went from a likable every person in the first Terminator to an impossibly badass action hero and one of the greatest heroines ever put to film in the second. It is a staggering transformation, but also entirely believable. And Cameron smartly doesn't let her newfound physicality undermine the equally strong characterization. Now I want to know, who is your favorite action hero of all time? You let me know in the comments section down below. Number 7, Thanos, The Avengers and Guardians of the Galaxy. The Marvel Cinematic Universe's Thanos is an especially interesting case, because when the supervillain made his big screen debut way back in the Avengers, Marvel Studios hadn't yet cast a name actor for the part, and so hired a lesser-known performer, Damien Poitier, to play the Mad Titan for his mid-credits cameo. But Thanos' change in appearance extends far beyond a personnel shift. For Poitier's role as Thanos, he appeared via prosthetics and makeup, which were enhanced with CGI in order to exaggerate the character's facial features, namely his giant chin and bright blue eyes. When Josh Brolin subsequently played the part in Guardians of the Galaxy, though, Thanos was achieved via performance capture and looked distinctly different. His skin is a decidedly lighter shade of purple, his jawline looks subtly different, his eyes aren't bright blue, and of course, he looks like Josh Brolin. If you haven't watched the Avengers in a while, it is easy to forget just how different that version of Thanos looks to the Brolin one. It was definitely a sensible change, even if the discontinuity between the two might bother the nitpickers. Number 6, Laurie Strode, Halloween Resurrection and Halloween 2018. 2018's Halloween gave franchise heroine Laurie Strode the Sarah Connor treatment by taking the slight yet resourceful series protagonist and transforming her into a hardened, battle-ready badass. The last time fans saw Laurie prior to this was 2002's atrocious Halloween Resurrection, where Laurie was holed up in a mental institution waiting to spring a trap on Michael. Ignoring the fact that Laurie dies and the sequel has since been scrubbed from Halloween's continuity, along with all the other sequels in fact, it gave audiences a skittish, frazzled Laurie who made a dumb decision to hesitate killing Michael and paid the ultimate price. Fans were not happy, especially after Halloween H2O seemed to give both Laurie and Michael a satisfyingly final ending. But Halloween 2018 2018 smartly rewrote the book on Laurie, taking that idiot imposter we saw in Resurrection and making her once again the smart, scrappy fighter we met in 1978, but layering on 4 decades of weapons training and mental anguish. Much like Sarah Connor, however, old Laurie isn't just a badass caricature of her former self. It's clear her initial encounter with Michael has left her rattled with PTSD ever since. However, she refuses to simply be a victim, and as she proves in the film's final battle, can definitely hold her physical own against her nemesis just fine. Don't mess with Laurie. Number 5. Wolverine, X-Men Days of Future Past, and Logan. Prior to what we thought was Hugh Jackman's final turn as Wolverine in 2017's Logan, before Deadpool and Wolverine arrived in 2024, the last time we saw the character on screen was X-Men Apocalypse the year before. But the series' tricksy continuity being what it is, what with Apocalypse taking place in 1983, Wolverine's closest temporal appearance to Logan was actually in X-Men Days of Future Past, where he's shown hanging out in a harmonious 2023 at the end of the movie. And we might add, he's looking pretty damn trim as well. While Logan exists in its own ambiguous continuity, it's obviously intended to riff off the fierce, shredded Wolverine that fans know and love from the prior X-Men films. To that end, in Logan's hellish, post-apocalyptic world where mutants have mostly been wiped out, Wolverine's healthy black mane is scruffier and grayer, his face looks noticeably more weathered, his clothes are a mess, and his body is ravaged by wounds as his healing factor begins to fail him. Between the sharp script and direction and Jackman's magnificently grizzled performance, fans got a near-perfect rendition of Old Man Logan, incorporating the context of all the characters' prior screen appearances and giving him a deeply poignant send-off for the ages. Before Deadpool dug him up, of course. If you're enjoying this video looking at drastic character transformations, then why not head on over to the channel to see more videos like this and hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Number 4. Bo Peep, Toy Story 2 and Toy Story 4. Until the release of Toy Story 4, Bo Peep was best remembered as the dainty porcelain love interest of Woody, an agency-free trophy for the male protagonist and little more really. Unimportant enough was she, it seems, to be written out of the franchise off-screen at the start of Toy Story 3. It's just rude. But with Toy Story 4, Pixar surprised everyone by not only bringing the character back for an affecting and mature reunion with Woody, but by giving the character a terrifically contemporary makeover. For starters, her stereotypical pink-white garb is mostly gone, as are her bonnet and dress in favor of some decidedly more practical trousers, while her staff is now used less for herding sheep and more for saving the day. You'll love to see it. But Bo's transformation goes beyond the physical, for the character's personality also underwent a major transplant. The demure, agreeable Bo of the first 2 films is now assertive and self-actualized, ultimately teaching Woody a new way of life while turning her prior trauma into a valuable life experience. Given how perfunctorily Bo was disposed of in Toy Story 3, this was a canny redemption for the character, refashioning her as a brave and intelligent heroine standing as tall as any of her male counterparts. Number 3. Lord Voldemort, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, and Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. Much like Thanos, Voldemort's first appearance in the Harry Potter franchise occurred before the studio had actually settled on a permanent A-list actor to play him. As such, Voldemort's brief appearance in the very first Potter movie depicts him incredibly differently, materializing on the back of Professor Quirrell's head, played by Ian Hart. This version of Voldemort was entirely CGI, sporting a large nose, complete with red eyes, while using Hart himself as a facial reference. By the time Voldemort re-emerged in the 4th film, The Goblet of Fire, Ralph Fiennes had been cast in the role, ensuring his appearance was markedly different. Where to begin with this? So his jaw is flatter and less angular, his flattened nose appears as in the books, his eyes are now blue, he has fully formed ears, his voice is softer and less raspy, and he looks a bit like Ralph Fiennes, obviously. Like Thanos, it's easy to forget Proto-Voldemort, or Proto-Mort if you've not watched The Philosopher's Stone in quite a while. And though it's an intriguingly weird depiction of the character, there's little point arguing with the brilliance of Fiennes' fantastic work as Voldy for the rest of the series. He was terrifyingly awesome. Number 2. Michael Corleone, The Godfather Part 2 and The Godfather Part 3. The Godfather's Michael Corleone is one of the most iconic and richly drawn characters in all of cinema history. A character who metamorphoses both physically and spiritually over the course of Francis Ford Coppola's epic crime trilogy. Michael's emotional change is more of a slow burn across the three films, as repeated betrayals and deaths in his own family prompt him to harden after he becomes the Don of the Corleone family. But with the first two movies taking place a few short years apart, naturally Michael looks more or less the same. Yet with The Godfather Part 3 taking place 20 years later, makeup effects had to be used to make a well-aged 50-year-old Pacino resemble a worn-out 60-year-old Michael. The grey hair and weathered skin do a fantastic job of selling the physical effect Michael's job has had on him, while he spends most of the movie trying to make amends for his violent past. This, of course, culminates in the film's final scene, where we jump forward another 2 decades and an elderly Michael, again made up appropriately, dies alone in Italy. Whatever you make of the third Godfather film, it convincingly conveys the ravages of time alongside the additional price Michael paid for being the man at the top. And number 1, Ash, The Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2. Nothing says drastic transformation like cutting off your possessed hand and replacing it with a chainsaw, right? In Sam Raimi's original 1981 horror hit, protagonist Ash Williams is a pretty regular dude, and naturally pretty damn terrified when he and his pals find themselves tormented by a playfully murderous demon. But in Evil Dead 2, which in many ways is a bigger budget reprise of the original film, Ash's relatively serious and grounded character is transformed into a borderline cartoon character in the best freaking way possible, as Ash damn near loses his mind while battling the Deadites. The more serious, sensible Ash of the first film is nowhere to be seen, with Bruce Campbell giving an off-the-wall performance for the ages, accentuated entirely by Raimi's gleefully off-kilter direction. And the transformation, of course, is completed when Ash gives himself that upgraded limb, ensuring that Evil Dead 2's crazier iteration of Ash is the one that people really remember. Groovy indeed.